Welcome, everyone. We have a pretty hefty agenda for the next 2 hours, so I'd like to get started. We have a handful of folks in the room today. We'll do a little bit of introductions. I am Michelle Blickert, the Transportation Planning Program Manager here at TRPA. Welcome to our second meeting of the Transportation Performance Technical Advisory Committee. Our goal today is to guide the development of a 2024 Regional Transportation Plan, Sustainable Communities Strategy, Analysis and Recommendations Report. No acronym needed there. It's a mouthful. So in the room, just going around the room quickly, we have a few staff members and a few of our committee members. So I guess I'll probably save some time and just do some introductions and then I'll go to those online. So we have Josh Schmidt, Ken Caseman, from the Research and Analysis team, Dan Segan, Science Policy Officer. Did I get that right? Awesome. Myself, as I mentioned, we also have Jessica, awesome support staff today, taking minutes and keeping us on track. Ryan Murray from the Transportation Planning team. And then that leaves a few committee members. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Carl HTTP.
Thank you, Carl.
Chris Martinovich, Carson City.
Steve Bashir, South Shore Transportation Management Association.
Fantastic. Now we'll go online. I'll call out your name. Representing the public, Miss Carol Black.
Hi, I'm a resident of Incline Village.
Thank you, Carol. And Anush from the city of South Lake Tahoe.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Anush Najad, Director of Public Works with City of South Lake Tahoe.
Dave from Washoe County.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager here at Washoe County.
Rebecca NDOT.
Good afternoon, Rebecca Capular, Assistant Director NDOT of Planning.
Thank you, Rebecca. And representing Caltrans?
Hello, my name is Eric Royer. I'm from Caltrans District 3, and I cover the Tahoe Basin for highway operations.
Eric, are you the only folks from Caltrans today?
My supervisor Noid was double booked. He couldn't make it today. He's says he may join us later on, depending on how soon that ends.
Okay, I see. Is it Omid? Ahmed? Might also be with us today. All right. Continuing on the North Shore, Jamie.
Hey, Michelle, I'm actually about to pull in and walk through the door, but Jamie Wright with Placer County.
I could have waited. All right, thank you, Jamie. Let's see, we talked about NDOT. Let's see what else. All right. Oh, and Catherine also with Caltrans. A few more staff members online. We have Kira Richardson from the transportation team and Rachel Shaw. And representing the North Shore TMA, Sarah, welcome back. Sarah's with us online. She might be muted. There she is. We'll promote her.
Hi,
Sarah
Glenn with the TNT TMA.
Wonderful. And Stephanie Holloway. All right, we will, I think we've muted some folks. Not on purpose, Stephanie, I promise.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, Stephanie Holloway. I'm for some reason I'm in webinar mode. So I'm with you though. I'm here and listening. Stephanie Holloway, Deputy CEO for Placer County.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I think last but not least, of course, Nick Haven from TRPA. Let's see. I think that about rounds us out. They've got another. I'll check. Did you all right, I think we're set. I think people can now speak freely, raise their hand. So yeah, just a few logistics for today. We obviously have a host of folks online. So please bear with us. We'll be tracking those hands and, but you are, I think most of you probably are able just to speak up as needed. So as I mentioned, we've got 2 hours ahead of ourselves. We do need to formally approve our January minutes. And, I know I received one correction. We're gonna make sure that we had all the attendees who were in attendance last month. Are there any other corrections necessary to the
Just a
minutes?
small one, misspelled Gavin Feiger's last name.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you for catching that. Gavin unfortunately couldn't be here. He just, let me know that. So we'll make sure we fix that. Anything else? Anyone online? All right. So with that, we will approve those minutes. And we'll get started. Next slide. So today we're here to review those final transportation metrics. And I just kind of like to take a step back and remind you all how it all fits together. There's a lot of transportation planning going on, not just at our agency, but right now what we're really focused on is this performance report. And that performance report is important in the development of our next regional transportation plan, which we are updating right now, and we update that particular plan every 4 years. The regional transportation plan is interconnected to the regional plan. All of the policies in the regional transportation plan form the transportation element of our regional plan. So right now, we're finishing up, or hope to finish up, our final report. And now, of course, in the mix is this final report. And what we've been here as a technical advisory committee to do is to review the high-level transportation metrics. Can you go to the next slide? So what we're doing right now is that step 2, where we're evaluating the performance of our metrics. And then we're also today, hopefully that second hour, we'll be looking at draft management responses that we'd like to incorporate into a final report. Next slide. So the last time we met, we discussed transit. And now we're on to those last 2 today, active transportation and auto. Next slide. So moving into active transportation, we're going to start with, next slide, please. Low stress bike and ped lane miles was something we identified well over a year and a half ago. Ryan Murray, as I mentioned from the transportation planning team, he's been working hard on the active transportation plan update. That's going to be going forward on Wednesday before our board. So I'm going to turn it over to him to kind of talk you through some of these new metrics. We're going to be tracking bicycle level of traffic stress as well as pedestrian experience. Over time, we don't have a baseline today, but we do have some good information. And we know that this tool is online today. He'll be talking a little bit more about that. But it's really important to help the implementing partners when considering projects and their improvements that they're making. We also think it's going to be a good item to enhance their grant applications and decision-making that they have to do. Right now, I know on your screen, you just see a bunch of dots, which is why Ryan is here to explain what you're actually seeing. I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Michelle. Ryan Murray, TRPA. As Michelle mentioned, we recently just wrapped up a set of analyses with the bicycle level of traffic stress and the pedestrian experience index for our upcoming active transportation plan going to governing board this Wednesday. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the bicycle level of traffic stress for intersections. So all those points on a map represent an intersection of 2 roadways or 2 or more roadway segments. And so just to give you a high level overview of what bicycle level of traffic stress is, it's a category designation of road stress characteristics categorized from a level of traffic stress 1 through a level of traffic stress 4. 1 is the lowest stress designation and 4 is the highest stress designation. The way that this ties into a bicyclist is the higher the stress level of the roadway, the more stressful it is for a cyclist to navigate. There are some pretty, these are physical environment characteristics of the roadway that go into these analyses, things like number of travel lanes, the presence of a bicycle facility or not, the speed limit of the roadway? Is the intersection signalized for that intersection analysis? And so all these characteristics then go into a big formula that then kind of churn out what you're seeing here. This is a snip from a larger regional map that has every intersection categorized in the Tahoe Basin. So the whole kind of purpose of assigning these levels of traffic stress to these intersections and roadway segments is to understand where are our high stress roadway facilities and what are the types of things we can do to the roadway to reduce that stress. When you reduce the stress, this has been shown nationally through various surveys and how planners and engineers implement these projects, is by reducing the stress of the roadway, you can then capture greater mode share of folks who would choose to ride their bike to a destination. A lower stress road is a little more inviting for someone to ride their bicycle on than say a high stress freeway or unsignalized crossing. So what you're seeing there are the points for the intersections. If you want to go to the next slide. This shows roadway segments. And so sort of the whole central thrust of this is to understand where are our high stress roadways. And then as a part of the active transportation plan, we include a list of, or kind of a comprehensive toolkit on roadway stress reduction features. You know, a very simple one is, you know, a bicycle facility. If there's no bike lane and you stripe a bike lane, that has the potential to reduce the stress of the roadway. Doing something via the physical environment, whether that's engineering the roadway or simply posting lower speed limit signs, lowers the stress of the roadway. So this gives us a spatial way to analyze the roadway network and understand where can we get the highest value for implementing road stress reduction projects. Another thing that this does is it sort of quantifies the analysis so that implementers are able, when they're writing their grant applications, have a much more tangible thing to point to that says, hey, this segment of roadway is identified as a BLTS4, which is a high stress designation. Here are the things that we're going to implement to reduce that stress, thus achieving our mode shift goals, switching people from perhaps automobile to bicycling. I do want to mention here on this slide, we have an extra designation of bicycle level of traffic stress 4.5. When we were doing this analysis, 1 through 4 is the general categorization for these analyses. But we found that there were some areas of Tahoe that warranted an even higher designation. So let's say you're on a 4-lane center lane center lane running highway that with high speed limits of 45 or greater, and then all of a sudden the shoulder goes away. So what was generally categorized as a BLTS4 then got bumped up to a 4.5 because of special roadway characteristics that were a little bit outside of that 1 through 4 category. One more slide, and we can move on to the pedestrian side of things.
Ryan, does the level of stress take into account slope of the roadway?
It did not take into account slope, yes. So I should mention here as well, at trpa.gov/ATP, we can, and I can put this in the chat, we have all these maps posted, so you can zoom in, take a look at the area. One piece of feedback that we heard while developing the active transportation plan was where's all the BLTS1? On this map, it's shown as gray. And so we have a lot, the majority of our roadway network is made out of bicycle level of traffic stress 1. When we added a color to that, like the other ones, it dominated the map with whatever color we chose there. So it looks like it's not categorized, but it actually is. All those residential streets there, the class 1 trails that run adjacent a lot of our roadway facilities and through the forests and meadows, those are all classified as a BLTS1. Any other questions on the level of traffic stress?
Could
I do.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, this is Carol Black, and I apologize. I wasn't sure how to handle this remotely. The question I had is sort of straightforward. Are the criteria characteristics that you're using, is that a standard methodology, or is that sort of something we've developed, sort of homegrown?
That's a great question. It's a standard methodology that we then cater toward Tahoe's needs and the data that we have available here in Tahoe. So this was a methodology devised, I believe it was Justin Geller, the city of Portland. And and that has been replicated throughout the country. I ran these analysis at the last agency I worked for, but what happens is you take what are, Tahoe specific things we're looking for, and then sort of mix those with the hard and fast quantitative analyses to then get a more real world condition on how these bicycle level of traffic stress designations kind of come out. An example of that is we, for the active transportation plan, we convened a technical advisory committee similar to this one. And then we posted drafts of these analyses. And, we heard back from folks, both the public and implementing agencies that, hey, this roadway segment has a blind turn that isn't necessarily captured by the analysis, or cars routinely go over the speed limit here. And so we're able to make spot adjustments like that. But this is a relatively standard analysis that we then overlay our own sort of like Tahoe specific data sets onto.
So could you go back one slide? I just have one quick question about it, given that. So this is intersections. I was curious that unless I'm reading this wrong, I'm a resident of Incline, so this area is familiar to me. And it doesn't look as though the main street through Incline is particularly flagged, and I would have thought it would be more exciting than right along the lake. So that's just a comment, and that was what brought me to the other question. So just maybe worth thinking about, how do you vet these pieces in terms of actual experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing to note here is these are kind of intended to be sort of living analyses. So what you see here isn't going to be fixed in time as we move forward and as projects get implemented and as the data becomes more available, we have the ability to adjust these analyses to kind of meet more real world conditions that you're describing.
Great.
And Eric, please go ahead.
I had a question on this slide right here. You mentioned that the trails are level 1. Is that what you said?
Predominantly, yes.
Right. So if there's a bicycle trail paralleling Highway 50, the highway still has a 4 or a 5?
That is correct. So you can't really see it in this. If you were to go onto the trpa.gov/ATP, you can zoom all the way into Lake Tahoe Boulevard there, and you can see the BLTS1 running adjacent that BLTS4 there. And the reason we did that was twofold. That class 1 adjacent US 50 functionally reduces the stress of US 50, but it doesn't actually do anything to that roadway characteristic. I know that from the Highway California Design Manual that implementing class 1 trails adjacent streets can present a lot of conflicts for cyclists at the intersections, whether they be driveways or road intersections. So part of this analysis, what we wanted to focus on was less of that hard focus on class 1 trails as far as utility trips are concerned, and focus more on the roadway network. So whether that's local electeds or what we heard through our public outreach feedback is how do we reduce the stress of US 50, which operates more as a highway than it does a main street through South Lake Tahoe, rather than just relying on the class 1 trails all over town, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm trying to understand what the goal is here, because I mean, I remember from Complete Streets training that not every road has to be everything to all users, right? And some facilities, it's not appropriate to have certain types of users. Like, for example, a freeway, it's not necessarily appropriate. It's not appropriate to have pedestrian facilities paralleling, Interstate 80, because generally pedestrians aren't seen there. It's a very high-speed environment. You might see them there if they have breakdowns or emergency situations, but generally they're not there. We prohibit bicycles from a lot of locations on the interstate. US 50 through South Lake Tahoe is a very high volume roadway. It's not necessarily high speed. I mean, it's not 55, 70 miles an hour, but it does, in for much of the year, it's a very busy section of roadway. So I think we've tried to work with the locals the best we can to provide to help provide a facility for, bicycle users by having that parallel trail. And now it seems like none of that matters because the road itself is still high volume. And I don't know how we fix that.
I want to, sorry, Eric, I want to add that I think the perspective for the city of South Lake Tahoe is that the US 50 within the South Lake Tahoe should really be more of a main street operations. I recognize that there is a separate trail, and maybe this map should show that trail as a separate alignment. But I think that we have a lot of tourists, a lot of residents that use US 50 to, bike to work or recreational purposes.
Thank you, Anush. I think Ryan's gonna.
Yeah, so just to follow up on Eric's comments, I understand with what you're saying. And again, this is kind of a difficulty in showing things visually on a map for an entire region. If you do zoom in all the way, you do see the parallel class 1 trail, and it is listed as BLTS 1. So it's not, I wouldn't say pointless. It does highlight that is a low stress facility that is available. But to Anush's point, and even in Caltrans's District 3 recent Act 2022 Active Transportation Plan, it designates US 50 through South Lake Tahoe as a Main Street designation because of those short distance bicycle and pedestrian trips. So again, I don't think it's, by doing it this way, we're more so quantifying the physical characteristics of the road and then offers that option for folks in the future.
So I guess we're going to talk about how to make those reduce the pedestrian level of stress later. What changes you want to see made?
That's next.
Correct.
But
yeah.
just to be clear, Eric, class 1s are absolutely needed, but what we're saying here is that that's not how we're going to get and continue to see the changes we need. Is we also need to work on the roadway network. So we're absolutely using the class 1. We have a lot of great counts showing that, but we still need to do more. And that's what the active transportation plan and the whole designation of a main street is getting at, is that we've got to do more. By no means are we saying, that this is not worth all of the time and effort. They're absolutely used, but they also get busy in the summertime. And we have a lot of speed differentials. So what Ryan's doing in the active transportation plan is focusing also on the roadway.
Okay.
And again, it's there. It's just shown as gray, and it's kind of muddied by the yellow line there.
I can see it.
Okay, cool.
All right, let's want to move on to pedestrian. Two more. Yeah.
Oh, back one.
Sorry.
So the pedestrian counterpart to the bicycle level of traffic stress is the pedestrian experience index. This analysis uses similar roadway characteristic features, but also adds things in like presence of pedestrian crossings, mid-block crossings, things like this. And this quantifies the quality of the experience on a percentage rating. So 0% being the lowest pedestrian experience one could have, and 100% being the best pedestrian experience one could have. I will say that this analysis, the way that we ran this here at TRPA, this is more focused on town centers. One of the metrics, or I should say two of the metrics that are used were commercial business densities, as well as building setbacks. Now, if you have a gorgeous shared use trail through the forest, that's not going to have very near building setbacks or nor commercial, a lot of high number of commercial densities. So this analysis focuses more on our town centers, which again, you're capturing those short pedestrian trips and maximizing people's experience through there, whether that's lighting, distance to their destination, things like this. But it's similar where travel speeds, even the presence of a bike lane that gives a little more buffer distance between pedestrians on the sidewalks and the travel lane increases that quality of experience. So again, all these maps can be found on trpa.gov/ATP, along with Appendix C of the Active Transportation Plan, where you can read more about the methodology behind these analyses.
Do you consider accidents in this experience?
Crashes, no. crashes were not taken into account on, either the BLTS or the pedestrian experience index. I know that my colleague Rachel Shaw just finalized the Vision Zero strategy, which put together a high injury network, which is a separate analysis that did take collisions into that factor.
Wouldn't, you might want to consider it for these pieces too, or no?
No, that's a fair point. And again, I think that's why we have this as sort of a living analysis moving forward. Just off the top of my head, what these analyses try to attempt at are analyses of physical existing roadway characteristics.
I see.
While collision analyses are important for identifying where dangerous locations are, there's a host of facts. So another thing we got a lot of feedback back is, does this take into account winter conditions? It does not. These are fixed conditions, so we don't have like an ice index as compared to a summertime index. But that ice could have contributed to a collision, but doesn't necessarily speak to the roadway, the engineering, the roadway characteristics that either create something low or high stress, if that makes sense.
I understand, I'm sorry, I understand the ice, but I don't totally understand, and I'm not asking that you need to make me understand, I'm just making the comment. I don't totally understand the collisions, because that is a significant problem in a number of settings, I believe. And it seems to me it does impact how people feel about walking. So
Yeah.
just a thought.
I think it was just pointed out to me too, that collisions are taken into account for measuring the performance of the active transportation network. So overlaid with it, while collisions may not have played a role in developing the pedestrian experience index or the bicycle level of traffic stress, it can still certainly be used as what you all are putting together here for the performance metrics.
Okay. Thank you. So that is one of the metrics under active transportation. And as I mentioned, it's new and we're building it and utilizing it as much as we can. And we will absolutely be taking all of these comments and, considerations into consideration as we continue to update it. So with that, we're going to go to the next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Ken to talk us through the second metric in active transportation, which is mode share.
Yeah, so again, Ken
Bike
Caseman.
and ped.
Yeah.
Mode share. Sorry. Please, go ahead, Ken.
Ken Caseman with the research analysis team here at TRPA. So I wanted to kind of just start by talking a little bit about the data that we collect as an agency. And we currently have 48 monitoring sites for bicycle and pedestrian, primarily on our trail network. But we do collect data across those sites throughout the year. And, one of the things as we've been looking at mode share in particular and a regional mode share, we want to better utilize the data that we do collect, whether it's our bike ped counts on our trails, whether it's traffic counts from the DOTs or transit ridership, but trying to really get from these sort of theoretical calculations of mode share to using our actual counts to develop a mode share. We're not quite there yet, and we're definitely open to recommendations or suggestions on how to better do that. And as we work at building in additional infrastructure in some of our counts and some of our particularly vehicle counts using cameras and other smart technology, I think we have a good opportunity to capture other modes in the same kind of co-located opportunities. So I think as we go forward, we're definitely looking at those ways to improve our mode splits. If we go to the next slide, between 2006 and 2020, we TRPA surveyed at commercial and recreation sites and calculated mode share for those for those sites. And primarily that was the bulk of the mode share data that we were collecting through those surveys. And you can see here the general trend line that we had for those surveys. And these are sort of combined, the surveys went every 2 years and alternated between summer and winter. And generally we were seeing, fairly strong improvement for our active modes. If we actually go to the next slide, I actually broke it down between our walk share and our bike share. And again, not surprising that in the wintertime, particularly the bike shares were dipping significantly from what we were seeing in the summertime. But the overall trend actually seemed to be fairly consistent with what we were after, which is increasing, use of our trails and increasing use of our walk and bike modes, which again is what this particular metric is designed to show, is are we seeing increasing usage of our non-auto modes and particularly walk and bike modes. And so again, we're seeing that here. These surveys, as I said, the last one was done in winter 2020. And so we had a little bit of a data gap because we did not perform this survey in 2022. It would have been our summer 2022 period. And so we looked at some different ways that we could replace that data because we didn't have the same survey. So if we go to the next slide.
Before you do that.
Yes.
Is that all regional?
This is
just total?
It's total. So the survey locations were spread throughout the region and were collected both residents, visitors, second homeowners. It was a fairly broad survey, but generally we're looking at about 1,200 responses for each survey period. So,
Are you able to look at it or regionally, geographically around the lake to see what the differences are?
I think we would be
averaged out.
Yeah, I think we would be hesitant to go too deep because the sample sizes may not be large enough to really make an informed decision. I do think with some of these other options like the replica that we're about to go in, we may have a little bit more ability to downscale it to sub-regional. But yeah, I mean, we certainly do have the data. I would just not necessarily rely on it for I think the sample sizes would be too small.
Yeah.
But so here we looked at Replica. So Replica is a web-based national travel demand model, essentially, that is under development. And they, like many of the big data providers now, are producing mode estimates. And I think, generally when we've talked to consultants and others in this space, I think we do want to take their mode splits with a grain of salt, because it's essentially an algorithm-based assessment of, the speed at which a trip is being taken and then inferring a mode based on that. But as we all know, as we just talked about, in wintertime, vehicles may be, going slower than a bike. And it may be hard to infer the right mode based on the speed or the acceleration or other factors. And so that's definitely a challenge that the big data providers have. With Replica, we actually did share with them our account data. We shared with them also the transit ridership numbers. And we do feel like we have an opportunity to improve this analysis as we go through the year. We also, and again, you'll see at the bottom of the screen that we're also looking at spring and fall values, but we know that the vast majority of our bike use is in the summertime. And so these periods don't necessarily align with our periods of high use or really our period of low use in the wintertime. And so this year, Replica will actually be producing 4-season analysis. So 2024 will be the first time that they're doing all 4 quarters. In the past, it's just been fall and spring. So again, we expect this data to improve. But as we look at the numbers themselves, again, what we're seeing is slightly down from the fall 2019 numbers in terms of both bike and pedestrian use. But the last few years have been trending upwards, and we do feel like this trend also aligned well with the data that we were seeing in the TRPA surveys. So we do feel like this would be an opportunity to fill in that gap of 2022. And again, as we talk with this committee, as we get into recommendations later today, one of the things that we want to talk about is whether we should restart that survey that TRPA conducted, or whether we want to continue to look at big data or other tools that you all might recommend for us to look at in terms of travel modes. Again, it's a place that we've really struggled with because of some of the unique circumstances in Tahoe, where travel to work data that you might get from the census doesn't really help us because we have so much visitor travel in the region. And so we're just looking at different ways and different sources that we could use for mode share. I don't remember if I think I have one more slide just to illustrate again that just the comment about seasonality in our bike and ped use. So this just shows again the peak in July. But really what is interesting is 13% of our bike ped counts actually occur in the wintertime. And about 25% in our shoulder season. So we do still get great use. And again, from all of the implementers in the room, as we're plowing and clearing these roadways and the paths, they're being used, and that's great. And I think we want to continue to do that. So I think that's all I had, unless there's questions.
Carl.
Question or maybe a recommendation. So we've got that SMART grant that we're working with you all and the DOTs and so on for trying some applications on the highway to get better information. I don't remember us talking about the idea of doing the same thing like the trail system, but maybe employ some of that type of technology in the future in order to be able to do a better job of also capturing pedestrian and bike usage on the trail network anyway. Whereas matching in our urban areas, we have the same kind of need to be looking at that. So it's just a question, maybe a suggestion here more than anything about how we look to try to tackle that, because I was reading your draft here of the, the machinations we all have to go through, you all have to go through, everybody's going through here and try to arrive at a data set that's going to be useful and reliable.
I think it's a combination. Please go ahead.
I think, with the SMART grant and our recommendations for where some of those sensors are being located, I think we did take into account a number of things. One is trying to locate some of those where there's existing count infrastructure so we can validate or disprove, whether those existing counts are accurate. But I do think that we have some opportunity with the locations that we chose, particularly some of the ones along Highway 50 and other places where we will have that opportunity to see all modes using the cameras and the infrastructure. Go ahead.
Yep, Josh Schmidt, TRPA. That is part of our plans for the SMART grants. The SMART grants will, as part of counting vehicles, it'll also have the ability to classify our road users using artificial intelligence. So we should be able to get some head counts out of that.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
yes, please go.
So is your goal to use Replica or other big data as a back check to counts? Or how do they go hand in hand? When you started off kind of indicating that our goal is to use counts to determine more of the mode share versus surveys, how does Replica fit into that?
I think that because Replica is a synthetic population, it's going to be hard to necessarily correlate directly to a count, but I think they can ingest that data to help calibrate their model. And so I think we'll continue to work with them and share our data with them to see. But I do think that I think, looking at either continuing to do surveys or looking at alternative ways to look at mode share may be beneficial in addition to it. It's sort of, mode is definitely a non-knowable number in many ways. But I think as much data as we can throw at it to get as close to what we think is realistic as possible.
Adding on to that, so basically, a replica, replica mode share estimates are, looking at our entire jurisdiction. It considers every road, every path, etc. Our mode share surveys really aren't regional mode share as much as they are instantaneous mode share at 45 or so specific points. So I mean, yes, yes, those points are great for showing trends and great for showing conditions at exact locations. They unfortunately are not comprehensive in showing the entire region's travel patterns. So our hope with something like a replica or something else is to try and get those trips we aren't capturing as part of our surveys, and maybe get some of those more everyday non-recreational trips.
And again, just to be clear, I mean, part of the reason that we were looking at replica, in particular, we did look at other products that are out there. In the past, we've used Streetlight. We also looked at the Locus product from Cambridge Systematics. And part of the challenge is, again, you have algorithms that are trying to infer mode. They also are informed generally by national household travel surveys. And what we found is a lot of those other sources that we were looking at were very much in line with the national surveys and showing significantly lower bike and pedestrian volumes than we were seeing in our own surveys. And so we were trying to find something that might better be predicting those modes. And again, to us, replica seemed sort of the best source of the ones that we were looking at. But again, I think we're open to suggestions or discussion on that.
Okay. Anyone online, any more questions before we move on to our auto review? Yeah.
I had a question. When you guys talk about your percentage, is this, does this take into account like the distance of the trip, like how far they're using it, or is it just simply number of trips?
It's just an overall percentage of all trips.
Yes.
So you're looking at the number of trips being taken then?
Correct.
Okay.
And in our travel demand model, we do estimate both VMT and trips by mode. So when we run our full travel demand model, we do have the ability to look at both BMT and trip counts. But in this data, I think we're just looking at number of trips, not length of trip.
Correct.
So then does the VMT model account for trips that aren't to a specific destination, but are just recreational?
The travel demand model, I mean, it accounts for trips to recreation sites. It does not account for.
But still a destination.
Yes, it counts, I mean, if the trip has a destination, it counts. If somebody is just, taking a scenic drive around like Tahoe and I'm not stopping anywhere, that does not count.
Well, but we do have through trips in the model, right?
Yeah.
So there are day use trips that basically enter the region and exit the region without stopping.
Correct.
But those are automotive trips, right? Those aren't bicycle trips or pedestrian trips.
I don't know if you can make a pedestrian trip.
No one's gonna bike from Lake Carson to Placerville and pass through South Lake Tahoe by bike. casually, you know.
I mean, 17
Okay. Any more questions online? Thank you, Eric.
Okay.
All right.
So I think the next one's mine as well. So the next piece that we wanted to talk through is looking at our travel time data. So this is using actually, correct me, NREX
Correct.
data for travel times. And so again, we can go to the next slide, please. So we in this analysis, we've divided the region into, I think it's 13 or 12 segments that total roughly about 104 miles of roadway in the region. And then based on that, we, using NREX, we estimate both median travel time, as we see here, and then we've compared that to the running 3-year average for travel time, again, in the same tool. And generally what we're seeing here is a couple of hotspots where we're seeing increased travel times in the last couple of surveys, particularly California 28 and Mount Rose Highway 431. But generally at the highest level, combining all segments, the travel time is really unchanged and actually down from the last couple of years. So we're actually seeing median travel times improve. And again, a couple of spots, particularly Highway 50, has seen significantly reduced travel time over the last several years. And again, in I think every instance that's displayed here, the median travel time actually was at or faster than the speed limit.
In almost every case, yes.
And so again, I think generally, you know, for median travel, we're not, you know, I think we feel like this measure is showing that our conditions are fairly good. I think the challenge that we have is that doesn't necessarily run with what people feel and sense in the region and what we hear complaints a lot about. So in the next slide, we actually did look at the 95th percentile travel times, which is essentially near worst case scenario. This is going to take into account when there's weather impacts, when there's construction impacts, and when there's just significant delays from, you know, highest travel volumes, highest delays. But again, even here, what we're seeing is, compared to 2021, the 22 values were identical. And generally, we've been trending towards improvement over the last several years. And again, same two hotspots, 28 and 431 are gonna highlight as increased travel times. And again, I think that corresponds with a lot of the complaints that we've heard from the public, Incline Village, Tahoe City, you know, 89 going out, you know, that we are seeing some of those delays show up here on the 95th percentile. But again, I added here the actual travel time for each segment on average. And what you see is between the median times and the peak times, the 95th percentile, it's a difference of about 38 minutes. And again, across so you're talking roughly across 100 miles of travel, it takes about 30 minutes longer at your peak times than it does during the median. And again, for most segments, you're talking somewhere between a 20 to 30% increase in travel time, which realistically corresponds to maybe a minute to 5 minutes of increased travel time at your peak. Which again, I think in terms of this measure would suggest that at least from a congestion standpoint, we're not seeing significant issues or anything that we need to address. But again, I'm happy to open that up for discussion or questions.
Thank you. Want to go online real quick? Anush, please go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question. Is there accompanying information about the volumes? To me, this looks like an impact of the COVID, that the volumes dropped and therefore the travel times have been reduced. Because I don't believe, at least for the US 50, there has been an increase in capacity. So it most likely is a decrease in volumes, which resulted in a decrease in travel time.
That is generally correct. I mean, there was a pretty sharp drop off in volumes in most of the region since 2019. The exceptions there are basically the same places that are having increased travel times in 2021 and 2022. So, I mean, yeah, in most of our jurisdiction, traffic volumes have decreased pretty significantly. But 28, 431, parts of 89 are up 5% or so. So,
Josh, is there, we have a lot of this information online, right?
yes,
The volume.
all
You can put-
yeah, we have not updated our travel volumes for 2022 yet,
Okay.
but we are in the process of processing them, and they are generally down from 2021 across our jurisdiction.
Yeah, and it's actually a good segue perhaps to the next discussion about BMT regionally, but we do have a very detailed congestion report that breaks down each of these segments into both seasons as well as more, just a lot, significantly more detail. There's a full report that we can share the link on. It is in the draft report that we shared. But yeah, there's significantly more detail. We're just obviously, presenting kind of a high level summary here.
I'm sorry, Michelle, could I ask a question?
Of course, sorry, I missed you there. Go ahead.
That's okay, apologies. Can you go back to the previous slide? I apologize. So this is Carol Black and I live in Incline, which is right where all those red lines were on the map. And what I have to, I have, I guess, a couple of questions, 3 actually. What's the time lag before we start to see 2023? That's one question. Question number 2 is, this averages and these numbers don't reflect my own personal experience, okay, is all I can say. And it seems to me, yes, things did get much better in 2020 when COVID hit because nobody was going anywhere. But as the years have passed since then, the congestion has felt much worse. Now, we don't have 2023, so I don't know what that'll look like. I'm also curious about 267, which I tend to drive on my way to the Bay Area back and forth regularly. And that's been really clogged up recently. So I just question, I'm not questioning your numbers. I'm sure you did them properly. What I'm questioning is whether we've got metrics that are really going to capture the actual experience that's occurring. And I just am a little bit worried about averages and I think the 95th percentile, that's good, but just really being sure we're capturing what's actually going on as opposed to somehow blurring them with averages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and actually, just to be clear, and that's, I think, one of the things that we want to talk about amongst this committee and when we get to recommendations is the original proposal for this metric was average travel time. And we here are showing median travel time because, again, if we think about averages versus median, what median is there's just as many trips that take longer than that as take shorter than that. Where the average is really just you add everybody up and divide it by the number of trips. It may not be the same case that it actually falls directly in the middle of the trip. And so we feel like for this performance measure, that median is a better measure of what we're trying to capture, which is how long does it take to get from point A to point B. I think also, again, showing the 95th percentile as the near worst case scenario, I think is also helpful to inform if there's hotspots that we need to be paying attention to, but not necessarily guiding our policy based on those peak times, but more the average or the median. And that, so that's our recommendation. I don't know if you, yeah, Josh, if you want to talk about.
Yes, I have I have a few things I can add there to try and explain this a little more. So, these numbers here are currently showing, median travel time over the entire year. I'm a 24 hours a day. So these numbers won't necessarily show summer peaks, winter peaks, probably weekend peaks. That is something we do go into detail in our detailed congestion our reports. And it does look at numbers, high season, etc. So that is something we do have. We may expand on for a specific dates if there is an interest. I mean, we certainly have that ability. As far as 2023 data that is available, we have not processed it yet, but that is available, and we can probably take a look at that and see what's.
Apologies. If I could just make a suggestion, and maybe we'll get to these later, and I apologize for doing it out of order.
Sorry, we'll get right to you, Eric, after Carol. Please, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Oh,
No.
I'm not sure that 24 hours is really useful. And maybe we just think about segments of that 24 hours where we're more likely to see the issues. So I don't really think we're going to see many issues at 3 a.m. And so I would argue that maybe we don't need that data in this kind of a metric at all. Just a thought. And maybe hone these down, and what we present as the key metrics we're looking at are the problem points. So that's my takeaway from what I just heard, and just a suggestion for us to consider going forward. Thanks. Apologies.
Yeah, but that is certainly something we can take a look at. I will note that it is the median travel time across trips, not across hours of the day. So because there aren't many trips overnights, it is not having a huge impact on these median travel times. But I can I check on that and see what's.
It's just something to think about. That's all.
Thank you, Carol. Eric, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that from an operations perspective, from an analysis perspective, in my mind at least, the running 3-year average doesn't really mean much to me unless I know what I would prefer to see the actual numbers here. Because if I see a number like US 50 Highway South Lake Tahoe state line, that number is always a percentage, but it's never being compared to the same number every time. You know, the number in 2019, if it's a running 3-year average, that's being compared to 15 or 16, 17, 18. And then the 2020 number is being compared to 17, 18, 19. So the number is dropping more and more because it's always negative. It's never going up on that particular row. But I don't know how much it's dropping because the average is dropping every time. So is it 60 seconds lower? Is it 2 minutes? You know, what are the differences here? I'd prefer to see an absolute travel time presented in that respect. The running average doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah, point taken, and I think, you know, what we've struggled with is how to present this in a digestible way. And we felt like percent change was maybe more meaningful than showing the raw numbers. But point taken that knowing those raw numbers also helps inform the, or give weight to what's real. And so I think maybe what we'll do is just present both.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Carl, sorry, forgot about you over there. Please go ahead.
Sorry. Thanks. So I'm somewhat along the same line, but I understand the distinction here is that for you guys, from a planning perspective and policy perspective, kind of high level, this averaging of it all is one indicator. And I think what you're hearing Carol and Eric and myself say here, there's also a desire more from an operations understanding of being able to look at the basin. And I don't know if that's the purview of this group, but if anything, I'm making a recommendation along the lines to TRVA, that we all develop this data. It's that if this is about managing transportation resources and where they go, then we really need to understand the operational aspects of this much more than the average. Because that's where those hotspots and trouble areas are, and where we probably need to look at, you know, solutions that are within certain corridor segments and regionally and so on and so on. Maybe it all smooths out the same kind of way, but I think that's a lot of what people respond to when it comes to issues. Where's the demand? Where's the real problem spot? So that's maybe corollary kind of need to this planning one, which is more the operational one, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Also, just to reiterate what Ken said earlier, in the report online, it has directional flow on each of these roadway segments, and it has by season. So you can look solely at eastbound Highway 50 in the fall and compare that to every other season. So that's a far more like
That
operational.
helps.
Exactly, it's
Because
more
I know the
operational
more we can
oriented.
get into seeing what the patterns are during the day, throughout the season.
Yeah.
You know, how wide, how narrow are our shoulder seasons, you know, everything from planning for transit to the trails to what do you really want to plow? I mean, we've got a limited amount of resources.
Yes.
And where we can direct those best to the best use is where this kind of data development, especially now that we're getting into big data and everything else. And the smart technology would be extremely useful to us to help fine tune our operational responses.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, from an operational perspective, all of those metrics are in the congestion report. So that shows travel time by direction, by day of week.
Okay.
It's not a percentage, it is a travel time. So that should be a bit more useful than.
Yeah.
Some of
I
the stuff.
think to your point, Carl, like, this is really twofold, right? The technical advisory committee is here for those larger region-wide recommendations that go into the RTP. But these tools, we want to make,
Yeah.
right, available, you know, 24/7 to help with all of this decision, you know,
Right. I mean, and that's
strategies,
the interest you're
projects,
hearing
and
there. So.
for sure, yeah. Okay, are we ready?
You got one more over here?
Yeah.
Real quick. You're looking blind on the
Oh my
right
goodness,
side.
my
We
mind.
went through, Campo went through this sort of effort about a year and a half ago, looking at similar travel time changes. And, you know, we kind of went back and forth and settled on looking at travel time index and planning time index as a better metric for us. Because we could see, well, in the 3 AM, you had a baseline, a vehicle should take this long to go from point A to point B. Well, 5 PM, we're seeing it take this long, so that's an index of something more, right? And so we're tracking the index more than we're tracking the percentage of change. It's still early for us, but it's a little bit more operational focus, which is what our focus was when do we go back and look at signal timing? How do we make these types of decisions in terms of moving traffic from point A to point B? And those indices tend to be a little bit easier for us to use than a percentage change.
Our first draft of congestion report actually used a planning time index, and all of that. What we found is that for our region, those indices don't, I mean, those indices are great from an operational perspective. I understand those indices. The general public doesn't really understand them. And if you're trying to make something understandable by the community as a whole, our opinion is that travel time or percentages is much easier to for somebody to understand than some complicated index based on the median travel time, on the 5th percentile travel time and all that. So,
Thank you, Josh. It does sound like there might be,
yeah.
a need on a different level, right, for the operators, so we can.
If there is interest in those values, it's certainly easy enough to add them.
So what our issue was, we were running into the same thing where we were seeing improvements. Our index data, similar to the data you're seeing, was coming in better and better year over year. And so it was like, this doesn't feel right. I mean, this isn't what people are telling us that they're experiencing. And so when we started looking at travel time indices, we started saying, oh, you're right. Some of these peak periods are getting worse, but overall it's actually getting better. And so we were able to tell the story a little bit differently than just percentage. And at fair point on the number, but it's easy for me to say, in the middle of the night, it's gonna take you 20 minutes, but at 5 PM, it's gonna take you 22 minutes. That's a, index of 1 point whatever. And so I'm not sure I would experience the same challenge with the public, but I could see your point though.
Thank you, good. All right, shall we move on? Any final comments online before we start talking about vehicle miles traveled?
My personal favorite.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
they've got one.
Michelle,
Carol, please.
I'm sorry, I'll be very quick and I apologize. What I worry about the last conversation piece that I think I heard is kind of what sort of, I'm picking up on one of the last comments. I understand this is for planning purposes and developing systems. I also understand the difference with operations, and those are all totally right on comments. What worries me is what I'm looking at here doesn't reflect what it feels like. And maybe it's the timing, and maybe the last couple of years all of a sudden got worse, and that could be true. But if it's not true, and if this thought seems to hold, at least for for some areas, maybe we need to think about presenting the data a little bit differently, which is some of the suggestions you've heard, so that the planning truly takes into account the actual reality of not only the averages and the medians, but also the high points and the low points. So that's just a general comment. I'm not saying it isn't being done. The last few comments just made me a little bit nervous, is the best way to say it. So I will now be quiet as your consumer here. Sorry.
No need, no apologies, Carol. It's all good. I think we're all taking this into consideration right now. And as Josh said, we'll have 23, and we can also be, kind of looking into that as well. Unfortunately, the timing of the report is, we do need to have a final draft, but that doesn't mean the conversation ends. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, Carol. We have the regional transportation plan coming up. There's plenty of, avenues and ways we can try to get to what those projects should be, to tackle those particular issues. So there's more to come. This is not the final word. All right, let's move. Oh wait, anyone else online? In the room? Okay. Thank you. All right, VMT again.
So this is VMT, Steve's favorite.
My favorite.
And we do, so VMT is vehicle miles traveled, which is the amount that all of us drive each day long, aggregated over the year. So we measure both VMT and VMT per capita. The one difference that we have with other regions is our capita considers everyone in our region. So if you've been a consumer of VMT data for Tahoe as long as Steve has, you know that we've seen peaks and valleys in our VMT, and they generally go with visitation data. So in the past, you could look at TOT for our region, and when our TOT goes up in terms of number of bed nights, our VMT goes up. And when our TOT goes down, our VMT goes down. And so we're using VMT per capita with what we call our effective population, which includes everyone that's here on any given day. So it's trying to adjust for some of that variation in visitation by adding in those visitors to our resident population. So we get total number of people here on an average day, total amount of vehicle miles traveled on an average day. And I'll talk in a minute about how we calculate that.
No, I realize, sorry, Dan, this slide, you had some graphics. I think I cut them off. My apologies, but you described it well.
No worries.
He had a little recreation at the bottom. He had a house, like he would.
Probably for the best. Next slide. So first, we'll discuss them each, I guess, separately first. So VMT trends for our region. So we use HPMS data reported by Caltrans and NDOT to aggregate our VMT data. We've got that going back for each state all the way to 2016. And it's reported through 2022 by both states. And what you see there is there's been a slight decline in VMT over that period. So primarily, I guess, accelerating starting in 2019, but overall, you know, we've seen about an 18% drop over that period. So part of the reason, I think Anush mentioned that we've seen lower volumes on many of our roadway segments over the course of that period and lower average estimates for AADT, and that factors into these VMT estimates. So the higher traffic counts you get, the higher VMT you're going to get for the period. The extent, so VMT, much like some of these other measures, we try not to read too much into annual variation here, especially if we don't think there's been underlying changes in travel patterns or conditions. So the exception here being COVID, and we're still trying to figure out what impact that's going to have on our long-term VMT for our region. But certainly a trend of lower VMT or lower VMT in 2022 relative to that earlier period in the last decade seems encouraging. Carl?
And, I mean, it looks like to me when I'm looking at this graph that Nevada stayed pretty constant. It's the California that's been declining.
Yep. Correct. Yeah, so Nevada's, I think, 5 or 10% lower than 2017, which was its peak.
Yeah, and this is also reflected in our traffic counts. Traffic counts on the California side have generally been heading down for the past 20-25 years. And that hasn't really changed all that much recently, so.
Okay.
What do we use?
I'll save it.
Can we go to the next one? So the other thing, we've got a threshold standard for VMT per capita, or to reduce VMT per capita. And one of the ways we tried to buffer against this interannual variation in it is by using 3-year average. So we use 3-year averages here to show both states, and it shows, you know, basically exactly what Carl said, that the majority of the decrease has been on the California side of the basin. But overall, because California also has more VMT, it's 2/3 of the region, that results in a drop in VMT overall in the region. Next slide. So effective population. So when we first estimated the effective population, we did it for 2018. And we did it with the assistance of the Tahoe Science Advisory Council. And we actually modeled the approach after something done in the New York City subway system, which basically counted people exiting and entering turnstiles all throughout the subway network, and to give a flow of people in the region. And so we use the same approach with traffic counters. There's 7 entry and exit points into our region. And so we use those as sort of our mass balance of people within our region, and then estimated a suite of parameters based off of those, such as how often do we think the residents in our region travel in and out on a daily basis? How many commuters do we think they are? We used hotel motel occupancy to estimate the total number of visitors. We have an estimate for day visitors, all the way down to how many cars do we think are there in each VHR, in each hotel motel within our region? How many individuals are traveling in each car? There's a whole suite of parameters that we use to estimate that. And our initial estimate in 2018, we landed on using streetlight for our entry exit volumes. And we no longer subscribe to streetlight as a platform, but we're in the process of purchasing streetlight entry exit volumes so we can recalculate again this year. But we've aggregated all the other inputs to this. And if you go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit about it. So we've looked at TOT, so this is hotel motel, again, also VHRs, that's short-term rentals. We looked at, so if you're gonna use, we've looked at doing it with the entry exit volumes from the DOTs, the annual average volumes there, so you can look at those. We've also looked at occupancy within our region. So as most of you probably are aware, about 50% of the homes within our region are not occupied full time. It's one of the things that makes Tahoe unique. So that's one of the inputs to this model is both how many second homes are there in the region or non-primary residences, and then estimates of how often individuals are using their non-primary residences. And basically, you know, the short story of this, again, and we're expecting streetlight data to validate what we're doing with the entry exit volumes here, is we're expecting to see a slight decrease in the effective population over the period that we're talking about now since 2018. We've also, you know, Ken mentioned big data. You go to the next, Jessica. One of the things we've also been doing is we've been looking at, sorry.
Anush just raised his hand. We might keep going and then we'll come back.
Anush, you can ask a question now if you'd like.
Just a quick question on the last slide. Do you have a breakdown between the different areas within South Lake Tahoe and other locations?
How far can we drill down?
We do.
Yeah.
So we use all the tax records reported by each of the jurisdictions. For the TOT reports, the entry exit volumes, we publish each of them individually. And then the ACS is a census product, so you can get it all the way down to census tracts there. So we can share that with you as well, if you're interested.
Yes, thank you very much.
No worries. So because there's so much, because estimating effective population through this bottom-up process is so involved and so sensitive to entry exit volumes, we've also been looking at big data alternatives. One of those we've been looking at is called Placer AI, which basically it uses, you know, your cell phone data. They estimate that they get about 5% of all cell phones in a region, and they extrapolate from that up to, what's that?
Only from 5%.
Only 5%. So the change in Apple's privacy policies on the iPhone,
Like we had a much greater percentage when we did the,
you had a much greater percentage.
like 40-some%.
Yeah,
Yep.
but every big data provider now is struggling with that because of the changes in privacy rules. The
Yeah.
data pipeline is
You get cut off.
completely shut off.
supply.
Yeah, April 2022, all the privacy rules went into effect and the data pipeline dried up. And so most of the big data providers have switched to connected vehicle data.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
And they're not using cell phone data really at all.
I mean, I think to Ken's point, when we looked at Locus data, which is another big data product, they estimated that I think it was a 50% reduction in trips in our region between 2019 and 2023. That, I mean, yeah, like we just couldn't find anything else to validate it other than, their expansion algorithm that goes from the number of cell phones they hit, just never adjusted to the change in data.
So how are you capturing days?
So Placer AI captures day use because it captures
From
every,
those 5%.
yeah, 5% of all cell phones. And actually, so we've done a couple different sort of validation calibration ones with Placer data. So this was the one we did. So we've done it monthly throughout the year, and you can actually see both the Caldor fire and the impact of COVID. We have these huge drops in the number of people within our region. We've also looked at, so Sand Harbor has very good visitation counts. And it seems to calibrate quite well to their visitation counts in terms of the number of people there on a daily basis. This is just an example of the seasonal variation that we've seen with it. So these are the monthly number of people. And I realize now that we're using percentages again here instead of total numbers. So maybe I would have been better served by putting in the total number of people in each. But basically you can see, so there's, the average number of people are hardly ever here. They're here basically January and December. Then we've got these low periods that are the shoulder seasons. And then we've got this summer spike where it goes up, to 160, 170% of the average number of people.
And what counts as population, or does day use count as population?
Day use counts as population here.
Yeah, this is just total people, if you will. And this platform is also being widely used by the National Park Service, as well as like Disney and other like major recreation providers to get some of their counts. And so they have done a lot of validation studies against, volumes, ticket sales and entry exits at parks.
Good. So next slide, just. Oh, I didn't include the actual population numbers. That's weird. Well, no, we can just talk to this one. So the story, if we incorporate the Placer AI average population, so one thing, maybe I'll just talk through what would have been on the last slide. So they estimate a slightly higher average population than we did through the effective population. So we had said it was about 120,000 last time. Placer AI suggested it's more like 165,000 on an average day in 2018. Their data suggests that it has gone down a little bit, but we're talking about 3 and 4%. Generally, we treat effective population similar to VMT, like a 3 and 4% change is almost too small to be detectable. But we do, so rolling that over the 5-year period for which we have data. So the last year we're looking at is 2022 here. You can see that there's been a drop in VMT per capita over that period, even when accounting for the effective population drop. But most of that, to Carl's point earlier, is driven by the lower VMT estimates coming out of California. That the drop in effective population is not as large as the suggested drop in VMT.
Is everyone following that?
Enough.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, we missed a slide.
No, it's probably my fault.
This version control this morning was not my friend, so we're doing our best. Thank you, Dan. You want to just be one more here, or are we good? Any questions online?
We leave in VMT.
Did we put them to sleep? with
I've
the
got one more over there for you. This is what I was stating. So I'm a remedial student when it comes to TRPA's VMT threshold. So help me, the 6.8% reduction. What does that look like? What does that mean? Real world translation. How many cars are we talking about taking off the road?
So the real world translation means that almost everyone in the effective population drives 1 mile less a day.
Okay.
No matter,
People don't notice because it's only one.
But again, because it's per capita, you can accomplish that goal by either having everybody drive 1 mile less or having 5,000 people.
and keeping the same BMT.
But that is not our goal in the regional transportation plan. The goal in the transportation plan is to have maybe everyone take a bus once a week, right? Like that's sorry, I couldn't
But
leave,
that's how you,
couldn't leave it on that
So
note.
They can combine their
achieve
miles
the
into the
fact
one
that
bus
we drive
ride.
1 mile less a day. We wouldn't need anything else in trails. We wouldn't need anything else in transit. We wouldn't need any of that other multimodal.
Well, I think to Michelle's point, like the way that you get people to go 1 less mile a day is by utilizing the other modes or utilizing other ways that you can get them off the road. So 1 day a week, yeah, you take it.
Improving our roadways so that people can actually cycle to work and not have to stop at a stop sign or run into pedestrians. And yeah, like all of those strategies are what we're pursuing to get to that ultimate goal. But it's also about the environment. You know, just adding more people isn't gonna get us to those other goals.
No, what I'm getting at is, it doesn't sound like that's a big investment. It sounds like it's a pretty easy thing to attain.
I don't know about that.
Well, that's why I'm asking this, because if you were telling me as a general public, I go, so what's the big deal?
Could the transit system and the basin actually accommodate everyone who lives there taking 1 trip a week?
No.
No. But that's what I'm trying to get at, because we need a justification, we need a rationalization to get action on capitalizing the things that need to get done here. Because we've been at this for a very long time. And the real question is, how is it we're really gonna get to this? Is it significant enough that we can make it compelling enough to try to put the services and the infrastructure there? Because when it comes to transit anyway, that's kind of the bigger thing. Do we need more or not? How much more do we need? And who's gonna pay for it? Because that's really where we spend a lot of time arguing.
No, great points. I think, oh, did you want to add? I was just gonna say, like, I think it's a good time to move into
Well,
our,
wait a minute.
yeah.
So is there something in here that requires you all to establish a baseline VMT so you can do measurements for people that are wanting to know what the baseline for VMT is?
we have, I mean, so the baseline for VMT, if we go back, so for years and years, we estimated VMT with our travel demand model.
Right.
You can go back 4 slides, maybe that first one of the 2 states. Right there. And no one was pleased with the travel demand model estimates. People thought it was all too subjective to internal processes and the black box. So one of the things when we updated the threshold standard 3 years ago is we agreed to use DOT reported VMT rather than the internal one, so that we would be, reading from the same book that 2 states are reading from. Everyone's looking at a common set of information. We do still use our travel demand model to estimate the effectiveness, to Carl's point, of the strategies that we're employing to get to our target. But that's, this is our common set of data on VMT within the region.
So the part of what the agency is grappling with, as we all know, is this whole no net VMT. So how does this all factor into that? Like if somebody tries to impose this, at least 2 entities are trying to impose on TRPA, this no net VMT from new projects. How does this work with that?
As a standard of, so what Steve's talking about is we have an adaptive management framework that says if we haven't hit our funding goals, new large projects would be subject to no net VMT provisions. So and this is maybe going too far down in the weeds for this discussion of the measures themselves, but the basic story is our adaptive management framework includes both goals for VMT reduction and for fundraising to implement projects relative to VMT.
It seems like a misuse of VMT to use it as a lever on people to raise money.
Especially when you see something like this.
Yeah,
that
looks like we
says,
made it.
yeah, but we know, as you heard, doesn't feel like we made it. I don't feel it. I don't,
Right.
you know, Carol doesn't feel it, so we know there's more to it.
Well, I think, the questions that Ms. Black asked are the questions similar to what you're gonna get when this goes to the governing board, because they're not gonna feel it the way she doesn't feel it. I mean, it's like, this is not real, and then they say, well, it's 2002 data or 22 data. And, we're gonna have the same argument all over again. So I'm just trying to figure out that I don't see any connection between the VMT data and this attempt to use VMT as a strangling strategy on environmental redevelopment, just to try to force people to raise money, which of course the state of California isn't really raising any money, nor is the state of Nevada raising anything. It's only the locals that are raising something sustainable, and yet we would pay the price, and I don't think that's right. Okay, off my soapbox.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go. Oh, we didn't vote that last slide we were. Okay. Carol, please, go ahead.
Just a quick question, actually, about the last couple of comments. I guess I understand why the move to VMT per capita made sense, in the sense that, if we have more people, how do we think about total? But there is some value to saying no net new VMT for development projects. And I'm not, says somebody who gets in traffic jams a lot here. I just wonder if, to pick up on these last couple of comments, how we should be thinking about using maybe both of those measures in some reasonable way. Because when it comes to development, I mean, some of these development projects are talking about, it's going to be all these trips, but it'll be okay. Well, I don't think it's going to be so okay. And so how do we kind of think about that is all I just wanted to toss into the mix. That's all. Thanks.
I have a response for that, but we probably don't want to go down that hole.
Okay.
That no longer exist, and the VMT associated with them no longer exist. So what sort of headroom do we have existing development that went away? And, then use as an example, the Bulwarks Mall in Tahoe City, what happened to all the VMT related to that isn't there anymore? And now the people want to come in and want to redevelop the site, which is a clear environmental benefit and a community benefit, but yet they're being held potentially to a no new net VMT standard. I don't think that's right.
No, thank you, Steve. I think you brought up a good point, which is redevelopment, which is what we've been really focused on. Those environmental benefits from redevelopment. But I think, Dan, did you want to add, or were you ready?
Oh, no, I mean, I was gonna, just to take it back to your earlier point, Carol, I think, and maybe Carl's question as well around, is VMT really the goal? Because I think often the conversation gets dominated by VMT. And we've talked about it for so long, to Steve's point, that I think it often overrides other goals. And I think part of this group, and part of why we're not just making suggestions based on trends in VMT, and part of the reason we do look at bike tread counts, and we do look at safety, and we look at transit ridership, is because we care about all these, they're all contributing to other goals. We're not an agency, or none of the agencies in the room are focused on like a single goal like that. We have a suite of goals, and this is one benchmark of success that has, benefits and downsides of using it as a measure of success. And I think when you look at it in the constellation of other measures, it's probably put in a better frame.
And to that point, I don't disagree, but to that point, what we're landing on is the same approach that we had taken since 1987, which is a project by project approach, versus focusing on developing the system that needs to be in place regionally that would mitigate all of the development, including the past, because we are talking about redevelopment. And when I look at the compact and I read the compact and this transportation direction in conjunction with everything else, and now we've also made it an EIP threshold. That is all about mitigating the existing development, just like every other threshold here is about mitigating existing development. Yet we do not have the system solutions in place. We have parts of them in certain parts of the region, but it isn't one that can address all of this, which would take pressure off the redevelopment individual project approach. And that's where we focus our political time and energy, rather than getting the money here or developing the money here to do, just like we did with retrofitting highways for water quality years ago. Capitalizing that system and getting it on the ground and operating. So
Thank you.
that's my committee member recommendation.
No, and I mean, what you're describing is, I think where we want to go in the regional transportation plan as well is like that larger, fully connected system. But in Tahoe, it is a little bit of an incremental, toolbox.
With a repeat of very old strategies. So it is an opportunity though, to that point of,
Yeah.
if we did what we're talking about, what I just laid out, we would probably solve the DMT goal.
I'm sorry, Michelle, I got two more points. One is, how are you dealing with VMT related to the fact that on the North Shore, you've got the basin boundary, which is your jurisdiction, but yet transit and mobility is interactive between, outside of the basin.
How do you
resort
sort of
triangle.
parse those services
Yeah.
and,
So does the basin get to take any credit for the fact that, the lake, the Tart Connect service on the North Shore, which now includes the town of Truckee, at least for now, 1 million riders. So we don't get to take credit for all that with regard to BMT savings and all this other stuff because it's outside of your jurisdiction. I don't know how you parse that.
I wouldn't see it that way in the sense that if those folks are coming into the
Yeah.
basin on a
There's a lot
TART
of them are.
bus, right? They're coming by transit, we're feeling it. You know what I mean? So there is
Right.
that. I don't know about all the technical pieces on how we splice and dice, transit ridership at the border. But the fact is, I do feel like when our partners outside of here
Right?
are doing well, we feel it.
Yeah.
And we need a little bit more of that when it comes to, like potentially more transit from Carson.
Yeah.
We're getting into the recommendations in some ways here, which is good, because time check, we got about 20 minutes. I'd like to kind of tee up some of those recommendations, but absolutely, like, that's why we are collaborators and we work outside of the boundary. Otherwise, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it alone.
Yeah, and the same thing is gonna happen when we get more into van pool programs.
Yes,
Who gets
huge,
credit for that?
huge support there.
Yeah, okay,
So-
sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. So yeah, 20 minutes left. What I'd like to do maybe in the next 15, if I can, is go through some possible recommendations. The draft report that we posted online didn't have those because we weren't quite there yet today. But I did give it some thought based on all of the other work that we're doing right now, whether that's the active transportation plan, short-range transit plans on both the North and South Shore, the work of the TMA, the van pools, thinking about all of those things, because we are not doing all of this in a silo by any means. So next slide. So the team here really is about coming up with some recommendations to put in this report that will help us kind of get transit where we want it to be. And if you remember our metrics, 20-minute headways and 60-minute. We're doing okay on 60. Getting back to some steady, bus service, but it doesn't run well into the evening as much as we would like. We're supplementing that with other transit services, which has been good. But we're not quite getting to our aspirational goal of 20 minutes. And we do aspire to that to fully see a behavior change. So here are some potential recommendations for your consideration. Speaking to that number one, right, is to support the local agency strategies for flexible operating dollars. We definitely heard that loud and clear in our first meeting. That would help us get to that increased frequency and additional coverage. Second is ensuring all transit operations are efficient, including integration across operations, right? Efficient services are how we can utilize those few dollars we do have today. So possibly like when the complementary services are there, like micro transit or regional services from the airport, how do we efficiently do fixed route and all of these other services together? And then prioritizing something we can do here at TRPA is the regional grant program. We have a limited amount of funds, but where we allocate those dollars, where we recommend that those dollars be allocated is in our shop, and we can focus whatever dollars that are possible, just kind of what we do a little today, but we could do it differently. We focus those flexible dollars where we can in that grant program to transit operations. Not all of the dollars we get through the grant program are available for that, but we definitely want to continue to do what we can today to make sure that those dollars are flowing to the operators through that grant program. So those are my seeding the conversation.
So number one, are you saying obtaining or establishing?
You think we can do it? Establish?
Well, I don't think these are gonna do a whole lot without that. These recommendations aren't gonna do much. It's just moving around the existing
Well,
puzzle pieces.
some folks have established it, some others haven't, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So what would you like it to say? What would be establish where we haven't thus
well,
far?
I guess I'm asking, what do you mean by obtaining?
Maybe it is established. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it.
Because I mean, you know, you've got some who have already established that they have flexible operating
Yeah.
model, and you've got other areas that haven't. So that's really kind of missing piece, right?
I think some are still trying to obtain it and maybe ongoing, right? Those sources that they do have on the North Shore. Others are just getting started. So if it's a mix of the two,
I think it's a mix of the two, right? Like Placer County right now has TOT dollars to put
Yeah.
forward.
Right.
Hopefully that would be the future of what Placer County and the Board of Supervisors choose to do. But I also manage the Washoe County side of things. And boy, they don't have a funding mechanism
No, they
in
don't.
place.
They're
And
struggling.
they are struggling.
And then to me, there's a fourth one, that's these three or you
well,
have more.
yeah, so just to wrap up, so this would be support local agency strategies for continuing to,
Obtaining, establishing.
Collaborate,
Yeah.
coordinate,
okay.
flexible
Well,
operate.
How about some best practices or something like that? I don't know.
Okay,
I mean, I just, so that the local agencies, I mean, we support their strategies, but we also want them to be looking for the optimum strategy, maybe? I don't know, something like that.
kind of
About
getting.
securing additional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we started Lake Link in 2022 in July, the first year budget was about $1.2 million. The budget is now up to 2.2 million. So there's $1 million of stuff that wasn't available 2 years ago for us on the South Shore, which is a pretty big
That's a big
increase.
deal.
We got
Yeah.
more to go, but
Mhm.
it's trending in the right direction as the Chief Science Policy Officer.
Carl, did you want to add something? And then I'm gonna go online.
So you've got three, is there any more that you've suggested?
Yeah.
You're gonna
I'm
go
just
to,
teeing these up. What do
so
you,
the
yeah,
other one I would tee up here is, I mean, it's kind of getting
Yeah,
back to
securing additional.
this bigger thing is not just these little elements, it's about working together with the local jurisdictions and the states we need more operating money.
yeah.
We need
There's
more
no
match-
illness here that money won't cure.
We need more match money.
Right.
Right.
And we're gonna have to be, and TRPA is gonna have to be part of that, helping to create that regional consensus and support to go do the work that
those
we need
bigger
to
asks.
do with the states and especially with the states, but also locally here to do this. That's kind of what I was getting back to. What's the compelling story here? Beyond, you only have to drive 1 mile less a year. You gotta-
Yeah.
I'll stop 1 mile short of home on my way back.
And walk
You
it.
Walk
did
the rest of
transit
the
the
way.
last mile, you're good.
Yeah, transit or walk.
That's fine. If that's the solution, then great.
All right, going online, Rebecca, please go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. I didn't know if you saw my hand was up. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I just feel that it's important to not just to be present and to have transit, but it's important for it to be accessible. And I know some of our road users have, or our transit users have mobility issues. And if they can't get to a nearest crosswalk, or if they can't access a button to push to cross the street, if there's a signal, I think that's important. So I don't know if we want to say are present and accessible, but that's just my 2 cents.
No, I appreciate that. The draft soon to be approved active transportation plan speaks to that a lot, Rebecca.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
No, thank you. Did you have something? Okay, I thought I heard something. All right. Anything else on transit? What else, what other kind of recommendations? So we focus a lot on funding, efficiency of services. We need to tell the compelling story. I mean, that is what the report is trying to do. So if you've got comments on how we tell that story a little bit more.
I think
Do
we
you
talked
wanna
about transit a little bit last time, didn't we? Where we were talking about the challenges that transit faces as far as
State and federal funding.
getting
Yeah.
staffing, you know, housing for staffing,
Absolutely.
you
But
know.
what would your recommendation be? I mean, that's where these came from, Eric, is understanding all of those
Yeah,
issues that they were having. Yeah,
well, the basin needs low-cost housing. You know, I don't know how sustainable it is to have people come all the way from Carson City to work on a bus or drive a bus for vacationers in Tahoe.
more affordable housing, was that what you said, Eric?
Yeah,
Subsidized or affordable housing?
Is it workforce or what do you?
I mean, I think that's the biggest challenge, you know, I think for us, there are a lot of programs out there, right? But, a lot of those are geared towards people who want to purchase in the region or live in what we would call affordable housing. I think that really precludes a lot of the middle class folks who historically would have taken these types of jobs. You know, if I have a family and dad wants to come drive a bus for me, he doesn't necessarily want to move his whole family into what we would deem as affordable housing in our region. And he then does not make enough money to even buy a home in our region. So all of the down payment assistance programs we have, great, but they don't work for someone of that work class. And so how do we overcome that? I mean, my biggest challenge is housing. I have 90% of my staff that comes in from Reno, and at the end of each winter season, I have a good handful of them that wonder what the heck they're doing. And for instance, I have had a senior driver vacancy for over a year now, maybe going on 2. And had a great interview today, went to offer, and she said, I crunched the numbers, and based on my commute and then having to pay California state income tax, it no longer makes sense for me, and I'm gonna decline the job offer. So how do we, PTD is in a little bit better boat, because you can use the Nevada side of things, but
Right.
me on the Placer County side of things, our partners over in the town of Truckee, all of us that are operating on the California side, but very dependent on Nevada residency to fill our vacancies, it's becoming more and more of a challenge.
It sounds like a nice fit for more affordable housing to support the workforce that's needed, you know, for transit, let alone also the workforce who's traveling here every day can then actually use the bus as well instead of drive. So it's sort of twofold.
exactly.
At the van pools, you know, how do you, Carl, you probably run into the same challenge. How do I implement van pools when I have staggering start times? I have people who, they don't, you know, they're already up here for 16 hours a day because I have them running splits, you know, they don't want to stick around for one more hour just to be able to come in on a van pool. And so we've looked at how can we standardize our schedules a little bit more to be able to get them to come in. It's just hard. It's hard when you run public transit and I've got one bus that starts here and another bus that starts 45 minutes away. It's, you have no choice but to stagger the times.
And if they lived here, it'd make things a lot easier.
It would make things a lot easier, but I will tell you, on the traffic side of things, on Saturdays and Sundays, my staff is coming in many hours early in order to overcome the challenges of the traffic on Highway 89, right where our yard sits. And so, you know, I have people that start at 9, but they're on Highway 89 starting at 7 a.m.
There is that average EMT.
And it just goes out the window when you look at days like that. And depending on the winter, you know, that can be every Saturday and Sunday in our region.
Thank you, guys. This is a good conversation. This is exactly what we're looking for, is sort of honing in on what those recommendations should be. So you're gonna have an opportunity to add more to the conversation. We have our report. I'm gonna click through the next recommendations just to give you a flavor. And then we might have to wrap and go a little bit online and take some of this, like you actually submitting comments to me. And then revising our report. So let's hit active transportation. Got a lot of words on the screen. My apologies, but what we're basically looking at for active transportation is potentially, again, using the resources we have, such as the RTP and the development of it, as well as our regional grant program, to really focus on multi-benefit projects that either improve safety, right? Because then we know we can improve our level of traffic stress also when we improve the safety and how people are actually feeling. So one of those things is just prioritizing those multi-benefit active transportation projects that actually do improve the experience and make things a little bit safer. Supporting funding for local jurisdictions and other partners to complete necessary maintenance and operations. This is almost like that first one we talked about, where there's not, I mean, we want to support, we can't always provide those flexible funds, but we know it's really critical. Maintenance and operations are really important. And we've also been talking about that with the regional transportation plan and how we highlight those needs more. We keep building the trail, but we don't always have the dollars to maintain it. And the third one is continue to seek better sources of data. We talked about that a lot today. We want to continue to look at mode share and our commute trips and try to find better sources for those two. And of course, we've discussed also restarting the on-the-ground surveys that we talked about. While they're snapshots in time, they're still valuable at those particular locations and the information we can garner from them. And then the last one is really digging deep into the active transportation plan and those recommendations. Right now, our code of ordinances isn't as strong as it could be when it comes to active transportation and the projects that we reviewed, making sure we're getting all of those design elements in there that we need. So we're thinking about how we can do sort of at the regional transportation plan, during that process, we update policies. And this is one of those recommendations, is to do that and put a little bit more meat on the bone when it comes to the TRPA code of ordinances with active transportation projects and design. So those are the four I have teed up. I'm happy. Anush, please go ahead, opening the floor here.
Yeah, I really want to support item number 2. I think it's very important that our paths, sidewalks, and other facilities that we have is open to the public 365 days, not only during the summer, but during the winter time. There's a lot of cost in terms of keeping those open. So I really support item number 2.
Thank you, Anish. Eric, did you have something you wanted to add?
Nope.
Okay. Anyone in the room?
So
Yeah.
you referenced your regional grant program
Again.
several
yeah.
times, but it's like too little butter on too much toast.
Agreed.
It's not enough to go around.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
It's
'cause
one of
it's
those
important.
things we actually have.
Yeah, no, I
right?
know, it's what,
Yeah.
it's what you got.
Yeah,
And, you know.
but it
but
is little.
It just, you know, there's no illness here that more money couldn't solve, couldn't address. And, you know, that's the problem. And, you know, just one other thing on the BMT thing. So why are we getting more money, you know, for Lake Link as an example? It isn't because of a threat of no net VMT, at least right now, but it's not threats that get the people to come forward. It's bringing your workers to work. It's getting your employees around town. It's getting people around town. And there's business sees an advantage in that. It's not because somebody wrote some code thing that's threatening their existence if they don't do it. So the less we threaten people, the more they're likely to contribute. That's kind of my mantra.
Thank you. Anyone else? We can hit this last one and then, oh,
Sorry, I was just gonna throw out that, and I don't know with your chamber hat on, but, you know, I think one of the challenges that we're really struggling with is understanding those patterns of workers coming into the region and having to come into the region and getting good data for where employers, employees actually come from. And I don't know if there's an angle through the chamber or through other ways that we can improve our data collection there, surveys or whatever, but we would really love to partner to improve that, because I feel like there has been a seismic shift there, and we just don't have data that's.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. 'Cause
Income
there's a lot of data on
on
this.
that
Right.
a couple of years ago.
But I-
We've been actually working with the two TMAs a bit. We need to kind of break through somewhere where we can get those large employers to, yeah.
Sometimes they're forthcoming with information, sometimes not so much.
Yeah.
There's a competitive issue there.
Yeah.
But I want to reinforce the point that Jamie made. She made it very bluntly and clearly, which is we've got a lot of people working here coming from Nevada because it's cheaper to live there by and large. And it's, less regulatory oriented. California taxes the hell out of people. I just paid one this week. I wish I still lived in Nevada, but it's not the way it is. Anyway, I just think that to your point, why you're asking for the data, Ken, it's really critical. And, now with more jobs available in Northwest Nevada, why should I struggle to get up to Tahoe when I got a good paying job here in Reno or whatever, Carson City?
Well, and I think COVID really shifted that,
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, we were miles apart when it came to pay structure, benefits and those types of things. And I think throughout COVID and the reinvigoration of Nevada itself, that's all changed.
Yeah.
And we are not that far apart anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Nurse, please go ahead.
Yes, I do need to leave about 3:30. But I have two comments. First of all, can you post this PowerPoint presentation on the website so that we can use it? And then secondly, when do you want comments from the agencies and from the public?
Okay, let's go to the next slide. For auto, I've got a couple here. I'll post those and get your feedback. We got a lot of work to do, even though we're doing okay, as you saw in our metrics. There's still a host of recommendations that we'd like to make here. Last slide. No, one more, and then we'll go back and then we'll open up to the public. So here's the schedule real quick. What I'm looking to do, Anush, is get everyone back together on a terrible Friday before the holiday, I know, but it was the best time where people were actually available, between 9:30 and 11 on the 29th of May. And so what my next step is taking this feedback after our vacation, taking this feedback and getting the report, that draft report revised and back to you. As you can see there, that would be around that first week of May. And then I'd like to get your comments back on that. So that's your opportunity to tee up those other recommendations you're thinking about or make more comments on the report itself. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and then I'll get that draft back out for the meeting so we can kind of finalize everything on the 29th. And then we'll be delivering it to our board mid-May or mid-June, mid-June. Is that a bad date for staff, others? Okay.
What day, the 29th?
Yeah, I don't know. I just want to make sure my colleagues who have been supporting this effort
Can come to the meeting?
yeah, or make sure that, we can turn this around as needed. Yeah.
You've got a
okay.
really tight timeline.
I know.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
But I think it's gonna be hard to meet it. Just because when you do come out, I think it's gonna be missing some data and missing some recommendations. And, people who haven't had to work hard to produce the report are gonna be wondering why. We know why, because we come to these meetings, but.
But I mean, if you think that there's something we should be saying, like, why isn't 2023 here, then we'll do that, or if that's the kind of feedback.
I personally think, and Josh said 23 is out there, you could incorporate it. I think that the best, most recent data would really help the overall report. Because there's gonna be people say, what Ms. Black said, which is
Yeah, I
legitimate
know.
deal.
I hear you.
That's 2
It's
years
just so
ago.
hard when we can't,
I know.
we keep pushing our,
Right, and you have to look to get national data, things that don't necessarily apply to the reality of Tahoe.
Yeah.
But that's the best you can extrapolate
Yeah.
from. I get it. It's a hell of a challenge that we all have.
Okay,
won't just put it on you.
no.
So I don't know, 6/19, that's like 2 months. That's pretty tight. So I might go to the executive director and say, we need more time.
Yeah, it's written currently to transmit. We've been trying to work on that. Anush, before you go, anything else?
No, thank you. Great presentation, but I do like to get the PowerPoint.
You bet. Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Take care now.
Anyone else before we go to public comments? Okay. You wanna- Any members of the public in the room wish to speak today? No. Okay. Thank you. Anyone online? Happy to unmute you. You want to raise your hand? Thank you. Okay. Well, with that, I will conclude and we'll get a draft revised.
Oh, yeah.
Just with this feedback today, with those kind of teed up recommendations, that first week of May, and then we'll be back at it on the 29th, Friday before the holiday. I'm sorry, Eric, it was the best date, getting the most votes and most representation.
It's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's what.
You
the-
had said it was
That's
the
Wednesday.
26th and it was a Friday leading up into
Oh.
Memorial Day weekend.
Jimi Hendrix, 6/9.
shoot. Oh, right. That was the second date. Jeez. Okay, so maybe we're okay on the 29th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 26th was the day I was talking about. That's in the, Right.
Thank you, Eric.
I
Okay,
think it was, let me double check to make sure I'm right here, crying out loud.
Sorry. I was going back and forth because I think we had.
The 24th, Friday, the 24th is the Friday before Memorial Day. That's the one that's problem.
Okay, well, on the 29th, which I was teeing up, I see that Carol isn't available. Carol, are you still with us?
I'm here, yes.
Yeah, we're looking at the 29th.
Okay, Michelle, I'd have to get to my calendar to honestly look at what the problem was. I honestly don't remember, and I'm not sure how to do that and not lose you.
I understand. Well, let's stay in touch.
Yes.
I think I'd like to focus on that date that I had in the PowerPoint, which was a Wednesday, 9:30 to 11 on May 29th. And then I'll work with you offline to see how we can make that work.
Sure, I just can't get to it right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, understood. All right.
Between Memorial Day weekend and that week.
Yeah, I know, it's a tough one. All right, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the conversation today. No apologies necessary. Well, great team effort too. I know it's been a lot. Thank you all, and we'll get the presentation posted here pretty quickly. All right, have a good afternoon. Thank you.